in a minute because I'm gonna need some. I'm gonna need some.
We, I mean, we can talk about it when the show starts. You got to get yourself a throttle lock.
Yeah, that's what that's definitely gonna be one of my topics to try to understand because that's I have to try to wrap my head around what that would be. All right, let's see here. And everybody get ready. We are going live in three, two, one. We are live. Newman is running late. Hopefully the sensei will be joining us. I don't know where he is. I didn't see him online this morning, so hopefully everything's
I
okay.
think he might be riding.
Yeah, he might be out. Yeah. That's that happens. So we'll hopefully he'll be able to join us in progress. If not, we'll catch him next week. But I know he put some new rims on his bike too, so or his trike, I should say. So I'm interested to hear about that. But all
Nice.
right, and we are good to go. All right, so welcome to episode 8. I had to call this episode "This Is My Sportster" because I was coming off of an 850-mile ride last week and feeling like triumphant and very much like I connected with my bike. So that was the genesis behind the title for this week's episode, a new level of bike bonding that I secured. But we're going to talk about that in the AKA the Swifty Run, as it's now going to become known as. Want to talk about that eventually when Newman joins us. I know he took a trip not via motorcycle but to Missouri, and I'm always interested to hear what's going on when anybody travels. So we'll catch up with him. And he's running late today because he's buying a bike for his daughter, so that'll be interesting. I asked him if he was going with traditional pedal, e-bike, or like a stripped out chopper. Newman's daughter is and hopefully 11, so she's probably not getting a motorcycle yet. But although, and there's one shoe-in topic that I want to insert, which is mopeds and like street legal mini bikes, because I have a decision to make and I need some advice from the 20th Century All Stars. We'll come back to that. Eddie, I want to talk about the prospect of prospecting and how things are going with your riding club. What's new there? And Mike's going to give us the latest from what's going on up in Puffquag too. I know spring has sprung, so I'm curious to know what's going on in everybody's neck of the woods as far as spring riding activities and like, are you seeing, what kinds of stuff are starting to pop up? What things are happening in your area? So hopefully we can get to all of that in the next hour. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Good. Anything I missed? Anything critical in there?
No?
No. All right. We'll come back to it if need be. The first thing I want to get to, though, Eddie, if you don't mind putting you on the spot. In our last episode, we talked about you were riding with a new club and starting to go through the prospecting process,
Yeah.
getting out on the road. Talk to us. How's that been? What's going on?
I'm impatiently waiting for the first events to take place. It's
Yeah.
a multi-step process.
Right
I
on.
think it's like 3 meetings and 3 events, and it's kind of just, sticking to their activities and attending like 3 times in a row. Um, it's called Sirens Motorcycle Club.
Right on. I think
Yeah,
I might have heard of them. I think there's a number of women's riding clubs in San
yeah.
Diego in the area that are really high profile in that they do tons of events. I have to see. I'm not sure if Sirens
I
is
think
one.
that might be the largest or oldest women's riding club.
Tell me, how did you this may seem like a stupid question, but how did you like, I'm curious to know how you found them and if
I
I
just Googled.
yeah, no, that makes sense. I've been there. So you Googled, and then like what led you, like, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit, like what led you after you Googled and found them, like what was the thought process between finding.
It's been really hard to find females to ride with.
Right.
Um, Nobody that I know of has been riding through the winter, so I've gotten really used to solo riding, and I actually really like it.
Yeah.
But I also enjoyed riding in formation, and I wanted to develop my skills, yeah, to someday even maybe even be some type of road captain
Yeah.
in a. But it's just there's no women who ride through the winter that I know of in New York City.
Yeah.
So my main motivation was to find like the biggest group, just people, just numbers.
Yeah, yeah, lots of yeah, exactly. That's
Because
smart.
I mean, I know that there are lots of women writers, but I know that there are fair weather writers.
Yeah, yeah.
I've been like mildly active. I've just like been getting to know different groups, the Long Island women writers and all the females associated with the Hogs in New York and a lot of Nassau and
So what
I know
what
I
they have a women's writing group up here, the Valkyrie Vixens,
oh
I think
yeah,
they're
I
called.
follow them on Instagram.
Yeah, they're I think they're local in my area.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of them, and then there's the Lidas that are also um they have a lot of like representation everywhere. But like I just want to connect with. I would like to meet other females
yeah,
who ride, and I want to learn how to do things. I want to learn how to change my brake pads and tires, and these are the ladies that are going to teach me. I don't think that there's a very inclusive. Sorry, but I don't
no,
think
it's
there's a very inclusive culture in the Harley world. And someone like me who actually dresses to not be as a passenger but to ride through the
right.
winter, just not. It's there's really not a whole lot to follow. You just I'm. It's been really like an alienating experience once I
I
became
believe it.
a rider.
I believe
So
it.
I'm looking forward to like meeting all the summer riders, but it's just I'm different though. I ride through the ice and the snow, and
Yeah,
I just feel different. I just wish that there were. I would love to meet some other women who did.
I totally understand. Not so much, not because I'm a woman, but I totally understand because as a newer writer. So, and again, and I draw an analogy between the two things, and I'm be curious, Mike, to get your perspective as a veteran writer on this. The reason why I asked Eddie the question, about how she found the group was riding, as a newer rider, finding groups of people to ride with when you don't have like a cultural or family link into an existing group that you can kind of, find your a door into is an interesting prospect.
I mean, I've been
Pun
riding
intended.
with the Hogs. I have done many, many rides with them.
Yeah, you know what it is. I think, and this is probably a good topic for another episode. You mentioned inclusivity, and I think that's
Yes.
motorcycle riding clubs or whatever groups tend to I would say almost be hyper inclusive of certain types. Like they're very there's riding groups for for veterans, for law enforcement, for religious groups, for there's business groups, there's different types of like life interests that I think that you can find where there tends to be very specific types of cultures, and that's like wading into it and being kind of a jack of all trades kind of person. I started with like a really generic riding group that was like family friendly, open to all bike types, men and women, no requirements, really loose, lots and lots of members. So and it's given me an opportunity to wade in and meet more people. But Mike, and I know we're immediately off topic, but have you ridden with groups over the years? Are you more of a solo rider? I don't. This is one of the things I don't know too much about you. What's your preference?
Um, for years, I pretty much rode by myself. Maybe one or two friends we might ride, but mostly solo. And it's relaxing. It's calming. It's enjoyable.
Yeah,
You know, you don't have to ride with a group per se. Um, Even because you can pick up and go whenever you want, you can come back whenever you want. You're not
yeah,
kind of tied to riding with people. Um, but over the years, like at work, we found a lot of guys rode, and we would get together. Sometimes as many as 15 of us would go on road trips. Big groups become
Wow.
problematic. Three or four is good. Five. After you get above five people, you start running into issues of keeping the group together. You know what I mean?
complexity.
Yeah, especially like in a more built up area. With traffic and stuff like that. Um, I've 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 found groups to ride with from Meetup.
Yeah.
There's an app
Yep.
called Meetup, and when you tell people that, the first thing that pops in their head is like, "Well, I don't want to be in a dating site," and they're like, "It's not a dating. It
Yeah.
sounds like a dating
It's
site,
not Tinder.
um, but yeah,
No,
but it's basically you can kind of look and you can almost find anything if you're into gardening, if you're into riding, knitting, whatever it is, and
good
uh,
idea.
yeah,
Meetups.
people will sign
I
up, and I think over the
thought
years
of that.
with um, four different groups, four or five,
Right.
and you kind of get a feel for like like this group is good, this group I can do without, you know, because sometimes when you're riding a group, you get some guys that look like they're showing off or they're riding a lot harder.
Yeah.
You can ride that hard when you're alone,
Yeah.
but when people are
For
following you,
sure.
yeah, when people are following you, you need to be mindful of what's going on behind you.
I've seen such idiotic moves because
Yeah,
they're trying to show off.
right.
It's just,
It happens a lot.
yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
And a few of the groups I've been to, like I said, they were a little more aggressive for a group, so you kind of cut them loose. And most of them were basically, plus 5 or 5 miles over the speed limit. We stay at the speed limit kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is reasonable. And then you get together, and usually you'll go for an hour, 2 hour ride, whatever it is. So that's an option. If you don't know a lot of people that ride, you don't work with people that ride, and there's been some of the groups, they've had women, they've had guys. Usually it's guys. I say 95% of the time it's mostly all guys, but there are women that ride that are in the group. So yeah, I mean, you could try that when you're looking for
Good
something
plug
in
for
the
Meetup,
area.
though, man. I have used Meetup is actually one of the places that I first looked, and I was it was kind of funny you mentioned that because I had the same reaction like when I first Googled looking for groups. The top search results were all Meetup links, and my first reaction was like, "Oh God, I don't want to hook up with some. I just want to ride it." But then I waded into it, and like there are, and I live in San Diego, so you guys are near New York City in a major metropolitan area, so there's tons of groups. Maybe it's different if you live other places in the country, but like you said, Mike, there are tons of groups. There are many, at least where I am at, there are actually many women centric or female rider groups. There's also like groups, like you said, for another show on everything you could possibly like. If you're into programming remote controls, like there you can find like there are large populated groups of people are doing. It's fascinating. But definitely, yeah, I would definitely good. And we're not getting paid by Meetup. This is just
And, uh,
it's a
and
great
and you
place.
can do a search for the group within so many miles of your zip code.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So
Yeah.
so you don't have to hook up with people that are like 5 states over.
Yeah, you got to
Maybe
ride
within
2 hours to get there before you can go anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
that one other thing too, I always the group riding thing is the group that I found to ride with is called Southern Cruisers Riding Club, and they are a national organization for anybody out there. Really, I'm sure every chapter is different, but real welcoming. It's like 50% riding and 50% going to breakfast and eating at people's houses. Like it's like there's a ride every week, but it's also like there's food, and there's we go to bike night locally on Thursdays just to BS. And so those are kinds of good places to meet, and from those experiences, like you meet people that, and I'm a extrovert, but I'm also kind of lazy in that as you get to be in, you guys can realize you get older, it's harder to make friends, and those are good ways to meet people for sure. So Eddie, it
Yeah.
sounds like you're waiting. What what your next event is going to be or what the first event you're going to do with
Yeah,
the
I
group
do.
is?
Because I was like, I just literally yesterday emailed them, like, I feel like I'm missing
Yeah,
something.
like
Like, what does anyone want to ride this weekend? Like, and they're like, no, you're not missing anything. The actual first official events in April 23rd. I'm like, oh my God. I wouldn't I would not survive if that's when my season started. Like there's just nobody's out.
yeah, you might this is a total like an unsolicited I'm my head is spinning. You've got my wheels spinning, Eddie, around who does ride through the winter in your
I
area.
feel like I'm a little bit extreme, and but I didn't know that when I started doing it because I
Well,
was around
I
people
would
who
pull on
thought it
that
was
thread, right?
normal.
So who else is extreme, right? If I think about, and let's pull on that thread, right? Who else is extreme? The two kinds of groups of people I can imagine that ride in the winter, and I'm just thinking this on the off the fly. There's two paths. You have, I would imagine, probably 1%ers who are hard case types who are going to ride no matter what the and maybe
Yeah.
1%ers unfair, but your hard case types that are going to ride no matter what. And thanks for those Instagram videos that we see of you guys riding. And I love those. Like it's like a trucker, going down the highway, and it slowly pans like to the left or right. You look down, and there's somebody on a motorcycle in the snow or whatever. So there's those people. And then I would imagine, I would think probably more realistically, like adventure bike riders and dual
Yeah.
sport enduro types that are into
Hmm.
harsh condition riding
Yes.
would be another group. But that's, you got to put knobbies on your Sportster for that. So yeah, well, speaking of harsh conditions, so I can't wait to hear more about what happens in the prospect process. So
Yeah.
please keep
I
us.
mean, it's just going to be attending the events. I'm going to be at every event, and then I'm going to also be escorting a race from Boston to New York.
No
So
kidding.
that's going to be one of the things that I go through. By the end of the summer, I'll be a full member,
Oh wait,
God willing.
so wait,
But they seem so cool.
we gotta hit the pause button on that. So what is the race from Boston to New York? Do you mind if I put you on the spot? What is
I
that?
think it's like called the Tri-State Bicycle Race. It's a bicycle race, and I guess historically the Sirens Women's Motorcycle Club has kind of done the escorting for the bicycles just to keep them safe on the
Oh,
roads.
no kidding. Do you know when it
And
is?
also like something like I love that kind of precision riding and and it's gonna be great training for.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Do you know when that is? I'm curious because I have a friend who might actually be a bicyclist in that event, and I want to see if it's the same thing. Do you know?
I don't remember. I
Oh,
just like I've been waiting for them to send me their calendar. I need to update my calendar.
all right. Well, Meatball, if you're out there, you know who you are. If you're watching, let me know if this is the same race. In which case, Eddie will be there on the scene, and I'll make sure
I'm
that.
so excited. It's a 3-day race. I'm really excited about it, and I'm definitely going to be signing up for every single event that I can do motorcycle escorting.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I would love to. That's something I'm interested.
Yeah.
Carlos sent me some information about how to
And
find.
I mean, the Sirens, what I like about them also is, aside from being the biggest women's motorcycle club in New York City, is that they're really involved in like legislation, with the Department of Transportation and lobbying and stuff.
That's good.
Stuff that I never heard of. Like I didn't hear the word lobbying once while I was with the Hogs.
Yeah,
I'm still with the Hogs, but
it's different
I
everywhere.
I think I found a yeah. I For now I'm really happy with how it's going. I felt like I had so much in common with the people who were in the room
Yeah, well, it feels like
when I met them. They were so cool.
this is it's hard for the California guy gets to say this. It's easy for me to ride through the winter here, obviously. So in finding people to ride with, there, it's obviously you can ride year round here, but it is very much it's late. Well, actually, early April now. So the whole spring is sprung feeling is very obvious. Like when you go to there's a Facebook, I think it's Motorcycle Monkey is the organizer, cool company from nearby here in San Diego County. It's a guy who's actually a DJ. I don't listen to a lot of like terrestrial radio anymore, but he's a DJ of the local rock station on their morning show, and he has like a little coffee place where he does like Saturday morning rallies where everybody who rides in the area can stop and get coffee, and
Ooh.
they do tons of cool stuff like that. But they host a calendar, so like the events, the chili cook-offs, the poker runs, like everything is starting to light up. I went to San Diego Harley Davidson, which for me is about a 40-minute ride north from where I am to get to, and they have a chili cook-off going on there yesterday, so I got to check out some cool
Whoa.
bikes. But even like that, like I pulled in, and this is a side, I'm derailing us, but I pulled in, and like 2 seconds after I pulled in, this guy pulled in next to me, and his tank, he had this orange and white. It was probably more of a red, but my glasses looked orange and white tank and paint job. It was beautiful. And I ended up talking to that dude for like 20 minutes before I even walked into the Harley place, and then talking to him again afterwards and a couple other people. And it's like I'm not normally comfortable doing that kind of stuff, but I force myself to, and
And
that's how
when
you
you go
meet
to the
people.
dealerships, it's like so easy to connect with people, isn't it?
Yeah, you just like, and immediately, and it's like, I tell you, it's a stock tank. That gold flake, my gold flake tank gets a lot of people's, like people come up and see it, and they're like, it's like an attention grabber. Although yesterday, before I went out to ride, I don't know if it was because I shined my bike up or just the combination of angles, but the gleam coming off my tank into my eyes between the sun and my windshield, I was like, at times I was like, this is too much. And the little chrome thing where the speedometer is, like, I'm like, I gotta dull this up a little. I need to slap some mud on here. I can't see, but yeah, that's, I did the I one of the reasons why I went up there is to try to do a hog mileage check-in, because I found out the dealership where I bought my bike, not only do they no longer have a hog chapter or not have one, but they don't do the mileage check-ins there either. So like the hog dynamic, I'm trying to get to the bottom of that. It's a topic for another show, because they're very active at the other dealerships, and I think it's probably because there's just too many dealerships in one area for them to sustain that many riding groups. But it's a good way, going from dealership to dealership and getting to kind of like check out the locals and eat while you do it is a good way to meet people.
Going going to the those cruise nights and stuff and bike nights is really good when you're looking to get accessories, because you
Yeah,
park the bike, you walk up and down, you see things you like in person without looking at a picture. You can ask them if it works like it's supposed to, if they would get it again.
yeah,
Kick the tires, and that's like a great way. Even clothing and stuff. If you see something you like, and usually it's been my experience, most people have no problem telling you, explaining everything they have. If
yeah.
you ask, just you got to follow the standard rule. Never sit on anybody's bike
Oh
unless
God,
you
yeah,
ask.
yeah. That to me is like there was I know this is a divisive topic. The show Sons of Anarchy. I've only watched a couple of seasons of it, and they wound up in Ireland, and we were like, what? This seemed like it kind of jumped the shark. But there was one episode where like it was like they deliberately inserted this biker scene, like they're at a rest stop, and some dude on a sports bike decides to, like, the one percenter guy comes out of the gas station, and there's some dude who's riding a sports bike has decided to hop on his Harley and check it out for a minute, and then he proceeds to beat him senseless with his helmet, of course. But that to me seems like, TV aside, like you shouldn't sit, like I wouldn't hop in somebody else's car. That just seems weird.
No, no way. No
Yeah,
Right.
way.
yeah, definitely.
No way.
I love chatting up different people, and I got to get some stickers made so like I can pass them out and plug the show and stuff when I'm bebopping around and eating from one place to the next. But that's definitely, for my I think from my experience thus far, I have found, like they say, watch pots never boil. It's been easier for me to meet people like when I'm not trying to meet people. And I also said, and hopefully this isn't offend anyone on our panel or any listeners. I doubt it would, but there's a stereotype that guys buy motorcycles, or like you get a motorcycle because you want to get girls, or you want to be you want to attract attract women or whatever. And I guess the same could be true for any gender. But there was a site I used to go to, a motorcycle site, and they had a thread about like, don't buy a motorcycle if you want to attract women, because you will only attract other dudes. Like anytime you park a motorcycle, like guys just start coming out of the woodwork, like, hey, asking you questions and talking, and that's one of my favorite things. Is like just the random people that come start chatting you up. Which, Mike, is there anything before we get to talk about some tales from the road? Is there like spring stuff starting to pop up by you where you're at for riding events? Are people getting out in the road more? Or is it still too sandy? Or
No, no, it's well, yesterday it was like, I think we almost got up to 80 degrees.
you're kidding?
Yeah, it was
80.
Yeah, it warmed up a lot up here. And
Oh.
then at night we had like really high winds and rain. The cold front came in behind it, and I woke up this morning. It was like 37 degrees. I'm like, what happened to my 80? You know. But I'm starting to see a lot of bikes
Yeah.
weekend, mostly weekends,
Yeah.
and the weather's warm enough to ride. You know,
Hmm.
most people um, like Edie, like you like to ride all the time, and I used to ride all the time. Like if I got caught in the rain, it didn't matter. I didn't ride in the snow,
Ugh.
but I've ridden down to like high 30s, mid 30s. That's brutal. But a lot of people that ride, like for various reasons, don't like to ride in the cold. They don't like to ride in the rain. And that's why I was saying when you first got your bike, Jay, is like when you find the opportunity, go out in the rain and ride
Yeah.
because you will get caught in the rain.
Hmm. Get
You
out
will
of
get.
your comfort
Yeah.
zone. That's
Yeah.
what I do. Like anytime I didn't like rain riding or night riding, I just forced myself out. That's what you
Yeah,
gotta
you
do.
got it because it's on your terms. Because if you're out riding, you don't want to stop. I mean, you could stop, but I know a lot of guys will stop like under an overpass if it's available, and they'll wait
Hmm.
for it to dry up. I mean, you could be there for hours, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You guys, it's so funny that it's so cosmic that you should mention this because just yesterday, and I'm going to talk about my Vegas ride experience, but the long story short, you can fast forward to you are spot on. Like the things that I did that forced me out of my comfort zone last week, the benefit is, and I don't know other things that you do where you can see the benefit. Like yesterday before I went out, I looked at the sky and I knew there was no rain, but it was looking a little futzy or whatever. And within like half a second, my brain did I've got rain gear in my saddlebag and I'm not worried about getting caught in the rain anymore. Like I
right,
know I've been caught in the rain, so now I know what to do and I've got rain gear and I know what I'm capable of, at least as far as I've been pushed. So like what used to be like, kind of weigh in your chest, like, oh shit, what am I going to do? Was like a half a second of, I don't have to, like, not worry about it. Like, I'm not crazy, but like, anyway, it really pushing myself out of my comfort zone. And
right.
there's plenty of science, that stress makes
Yeah,
you
once
learn.
once you've done it, you can do it again.
Yeah.
And it's just that first time, like because you hear how everything is so slippery, it's so dangerous, it's all
Yeah.
this, and then but once you've done it, it's like you know what the worst thing is, if I don't put on my ring gear, I'm uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and I weigh like an extra 20 pounds because I'm carrying all that water in my
Yeah.
clothes.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
but,
exactly. And how all of a sudden it's like, these jeans don't feel like they're very water repellent or, you can,
and you're gonna have to wash your bike because the
yeah.
bike gets messed up in the rain. You
Yes.
know,
Hmm.
Well, so we could turn to the and selfishly for me, I've been dying to talk about this my ride last week, and it's about half past noon here Pacific time, and what I'm talking about is what will now go down in history as the Swifty Run, which was my trip to go see Taylor Swift in Las Vegas with my family. Which, as you'll recall, I called an audible at the last minute before I left, which was to end up leaving 2 days earlier than I had planned to try to avoid rain. And I got to tell you, of all the things I did last week, there was this like weather dodging thing that I did that was probably the most satisfying. And I will tell you the details of what I mean by that to be able
With a
to
radar? With a weather radar?
with a combination of tools, and that's what I
That's so cool.
yeah, so it was really good, but I hit so what I ended up doing was because it was going to rain in San Diego and pretty much up the coast from San Diego to Los Angeles and as far inland as Las Vegas was planned to be 2 days of washout last week, and it was going to be Tuesday and Wednesday, and I was planning on leaving Wednesday for Vegas to drive all day. So rather than wait drive in the rain, and this wasn't forecast to be just rain. It was forecast to be like 50-mile-an-hour winds, snow in the mountains, and basically to get from here to Vegas, you have to go through mountains no matter which direction you go. So that anything over 4,000 feet becomes an issue with snow this time of year, of course. So what I ended up doing was last Sunday after we were talking, I decided to go, or last episode, I decided to leave on Monday. So I looked at Monday and I had a window if it was going to rain for the first part of Monday, and then it was going to break until Tuesday, in which it was going to start to rain again all the way through Wednesday in a washout.
Oh.
but I had this tight little window where I could leave Monday afternoon and drive directly east into the desert towards Yuma, which is, so southeast away from where I was going. And I could hang out in that pocket and then eventually go north after the rain left to get to Vegas. So that was my plan. And it worked.
Wow.
Not without some minor problems, but the trade-off of not driving in the rain, and this is an important lesson to anybody listening, was I drove in wind, sand, and dust storms. So I can
Whoa.
effectively check driving down a dark desert highway in a sandstorm off my list,
Oh
because
God.
I got to. But the flip side of it is, like, as many heart sinking and butt puckering moments as I had on the wind, by the second day I was like, I started to feel like not like a wind ninja, but like I knew what to do more instinctively. I could read the road.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, and it's like if you look at, so if you leave San Diego, I'm at sea level where I live, right? And so um I have to drive from San Diego at sea level. Hey, look, there's Carlos. And Newman's on his way too. That's a cool picture. Sorry, my listeners, I'm getting distracted. But you have to go from, and we'll read Carlos. Are you there yet? Can you hear us?
I am. Hang on a second. There you go. We are big. Hey!
Hey,
Hi.
welcome.
Hey, sorry about that.
No, you're just in time. We were just starting to talk about my riding experience last week after catching up on some other topics, and
Oh, good.
um, so we were just getting into that. One of the best things in my experience last week was planning and dodging the weather and using different tools to navigate and doing it by yourself. And I got out of San Diego last Monday afternoon just after the rain stopped long enough for me to leave. I'm driving out into the mountains of San Diego in this foreboding clouds, and you have to go over what's known as the Tecate Divide, which is like a mountain ridge. And then when you come down the back side of that, you basically land in the desert, headed out towards Arizona. And so that was my big. I had to get over the Tecate Divide. I had two choices: go over 4,000 feet and risk snow and higher winds, or go under 4,000 feet and risk flash flooding and washed out roads.
Oh
So
my
I
gosh.
took the lower road, which and you could see it in the video. It was only like this deep, but there's spots, and I know where they are because I ride those roads where, sure enough, they were flooded from the rain. So I wasn't even out of San Diego County, and I had to, navigate some water hazards. But eventually, I got to the top of the Tecate Divide, gassed up, and then started to make my way down towards the desert, and that is where the wind really became
Whoa.
an MFer, we'll say. And I had, not only did the wind, and this is another, another tip for, our listeners and viewers. I had a lot of weight, and this is something I know. What's up, Nooms?
Hey, sorry I'm late. Start over from the beginning.
I said the same thing, Scott. I got in about 2 minutes before you, and I want him to repeat everything verbatim.
Roll it
So,
back. We were just
yes.
talking about the beginning of the ride, and you guys got some of these live updates along the way. And but one of the things just to comment on for a moment is I had the back of my bike loaded up and with all my gear, and all the shit that I obsessed about last week. You can believe how stupid it was. That didn't occur to me until that, like, I was getting ready to leave. That, like, holy shit, this is a lot more weight on the back of the bike than I'm used to. So, and I got a little practice for what it might feel like having a person back there. But immediately, I'm like, all right, I have more weight, and I also have a higher profile with the wind. So coming down the mountain range was tough because the wind was blowing very hard. It was
Oh my
20-mile
gosh.
plus gusts to begin with, and
Wow.
you're dealing with trucks and motorhomes, and you're leaning one way, the wind is blowing one way, and then as you get the baffles of vehicles, you're dealing with the shift. So like if you're leaning hard and then the pressure changes around you, and all of a sudden it's like you're going to tip too far because it's So it was a lot, and you have to do this calculus like as you're in your head, like in live. And there were times like I had to slow down to like barely a crawl because I couldn't go any faster in the wind, and other people around me were dealing with the same circumstances. It was dangerous driving from that condition, but eventually I made my way down, and you get to this point where you just settle down in the desert, and the sun is now out, and I'm out of the clouds, and it was good until I made it to Yuma in the dark because I dilly dallied a little bit on my way out there. But I'm driving to Yuma in the dark, and all of a sudden it's like it was pitch black in the desert. There's no highway lights or anything like that. So it's like you can't see anything, and then like a sign will come by, and it's like a movie. You can kind of see it for a second. It was like, Animal Crossing. Okay. Wild burrows. Okay. Dust storms. Okay. Blowing sand. Like, what the fuck? And then finally,
hold that thought. Hold
Yeah.
that thought, Jay. This is where the panel has to cross-examine you and say and ask you questions
yeah,
about
please.
that. So let's go to that darkness. There
Yeah.
you are in a cross between a zombie movie and
Flat.
a Stephen King novel. Okay,
Yeah.
and somebody could just jump out at you. But anyway, think about your lighting of your bike. Did
Yeah.
you think about saying, I have enough lights?
Yeah.
Am I bright enough? Should I have added extra lights or more brighter lights? Or should I have had, instead of having little tiny lights,
Yeah.
was that something in your, let me think about this, or what did I learn from driving in the darkness?
Yeah, I would definitely, I felt good. My headlights, I drove with my highs on as long as it wasn't, a risk to somebody else. And I had good head front lighting. I felt good about like my signal visibility. I had like, I was wearing everything reflective and high vis that you can for night riding, including my luggage, which, plug for Harley here is all like reflective. What I think I would add for highway trips if I knew I was going to be at night would be like something on my helmet. Like I know it sounds stupid, but I would have like an electric something LED or something that. But I would add more bike lighting, and I would love to just have like ground effect lighting on my bike for at night because I think that would increase visibility too.
Well,
Also, it would look badass.
Yeah, also it would look, dude. Yeah, it
you-
would look sweet. But I didn't think, that's one thing. I'm glad you asked the question, Carlos, because other than visibility, I didn't think about adding lights. What were you gonna say, Mike?
Oh, I could tell you. I had tried. They have a reflective strip that you put on your helmet. It's called the Halo.
Oh yeah, I think
It's,
I've heard of that.
Like it's 3 inch wide. Don't get it.
No. All right, let me cross that off. Don't get it.
Yeah, don't get that. It might be a great idea. That thing never stayed on my helmet. It would either slide up and off, or it would go around my neck and become a choker.
Oh, that's not good.
Oh,
The
Yeah,
halo.
basically it's an elastic thing, and it could be maybe the shape of my helmet wasn't conducive to it. But yeah, it was definitely not worth the effort.
so
And
what would you suggest instead?
Yeah. What
they,
would
they
you?
have a there's I don't know if it's still around because a lot of this stuff
The Cyclops? Is it
Yeah,
like
they have
the Cyclops that?
it's the thing you put on the top of the helmet. It actually has
Yeah,
a fan, and
Cyclops.
the wind the fan spins a rotor that gives power to the light, kind of like a light on the back of a bike. when
Oh
you
yeah,
put it on
that's
the
cool.
tire.
Yeah.
And basically, it's like a little triangle thing you put on the helmet. As long as there's wind flowing through it, the propeller moves, the light comes on the back.
I mean, and
But
Jay, think about also like, and again, it doesn't. We want to make our listeners also aware that it doesn't have to be bike and motorcycle related.
Yeah.
It's safety related. So think about how many times. I mean, we see them here at cyclists, regular cyclists, and what do they have? They have the visibility, and they have that little blinking light.
Yeah.
You know, that
Yeah.
little blinking light that either sticks on with Velcro
Like a
or
strobe.
just like that, or a little strobe, like this. I mean, the whole point of it that
I've seen
it's-
rods too, Carlos, that look like almost like antennas, like touring antennas. Like you can come off. They're like two LED rods that just light up, give more rear visibility.
That's a cool idea.
Well, I will
and
say
there's
one thing too. I was also very mindful of. I had to be from a defensive driving standpoint, and this is true, I think, at any time. But you have to be mindful of how visible or not visible you are. So when I'm on the highway and there's nobody in front of me and nobody behind me, I can recognize what's going on in front of me, but I'm watching behind me to see white lights because I know that those white lights may be somebody driving at twice the speed I'm at who doesn't see me yet. So
Right.
like, you're constant. I found myself constantly being like, if they're coming up on me, and what I would do, and this is like anything, I would, make sure that I would, tap my brakes every now and then because that gives that strobe
Yeah,
effect to somebody behind you.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, anything. There's guys that you might want to think about that. There's guys that have, pulsating lights,
Yeah,
pulsating either from the turn signal,
like
from
a
the
little
brake
Knight
signal.
Rider effect or
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
just
Yeah,
not enough to make the person say, "What is the matter with this person? They're braking every 10
yeah, like
seconds."
irritated. Yeah,
Yeah, like this. So the fact that you entertain driving at night is a big kudos to the confidence level because you never know, especially on a strange road, potholes,
yeah.
animals, debris. Going now to the second part of that of your journey there, what did you learn or not learn in packing when you described the wind pushing you around? Did you learn that maybe you were packing your stuff too high?
Yeah.
Did you have too much stuff? Should it have been ground more horizontal and level because you became a giant sail? And how did you learn how to maybe
Yeah.
learning how to pack productively and efficiently rather than a big giant wind sail?
Yeah, well, the first, so the two things that were big after night one. So I got in like and it's important. I didn't plan on being driving in the dark. I actually wanted to get to Yuma before dark, and I stayed at a place called I picked the place called the Coco Pa Resort and Conference Center, which is like an Indian casino. Looked kind of cool. Was inexpensive, and so I stayed there, and the last thing that I ran into was the blowing sand, which for me was like, and I'll get to the packing part in a second, but it was like driving through snow. So you could feel it hitting you,
Well,
you could see it blowing across the highway. It hadn't started to like just like snow. It hadn't like piled up on the highway, but you could see like the wind and there's tractor trailers around me. So I did like all in half a second. It just like your everything you've learned runs through your head about like how to have your arms positioned. You gotta let the bike. I dealt with grooved pavement, like all that kind of stuff last week, where I was really happy. Two things: a, I was really happy that I paid attention to some of the shit that I read and learned. But I felt like I had you guys like along with me, and I know it may sound corny, but all these things that we talked about, like I lived a lot of it, and I heard the things that we said, and one of those was definitely, like we were talking about a minute ago, Mike, getting out of your comfort zone and dealing with, being challenged a little bit. Like I learned, and what I learned, so when I parked that night in Yuma, and it was really, I gotta tell you, like unceremonious. I was hoping for like a welcome to Arizona sign, like the welcome to Yuma sign is like literally like on like a side of a road as you pull in, and like I'm like, oh, I guess I'm here. Um, but I, got gas, of course, and went to the hotel, and one of the things that I learned the next day is I did pack lower. So I had my backpack on too high, I think a little too high up in my sissy bar. So I reoriented that so that it was a little bit lower. But other than that, the way that my bike was situated, I have to say, and this is why I called this episode "This Is My Sportster." My bike chopped through that fucking wind like a knife, man. I was really impressed. Like once I got used to it after that first day, and I lowered the back, like I wanted the behind me to be a little bit lower, and I was able to reposition my backpack, like the rucksack that I take off the bike when I go places. That I felt much better, Carlos. The big thing, and I gotta make sure I hit this, was one lesson. The hardest lesson, the most painful lesson I took from the week was my fucking hands. Excuse my four-letter words here.
Now,
Between
now,
oh,
now,
right.
now you're gonna start excusing yourself
yeah,
for the
You're
language.
between
All right.
you're
packing.
touching gas hands.
It's not just that. It starts with, actually the worst impact was taking gear on and off the bike. So between
Ah,
strapping and unstrapping gear constantly, you got bungee cords are flanging. You got
yeah.
like a couple of those, like those C clamps, with the metal strips. The end of those things are sharp. You come across one of those, just my hands got beat to hell, and it
Oh,
was cold was not a problem. I did have warm weather gloves. The size of those gloves was a lesson learned. The problem, so in addition to beating the hell out of my hands for the whole trip, on the way home, I did the ride from Vegas to San Diego in one day, which was the longest ride I've done in one day, which was 350 miles. And that was
Oh,
just by the time
nice.
I got home, like just from holding, the throttle that whole time, like by the time I got home, it was like I had like hooks.
Yeah.
But that was
Well,
it,
So dumb
like
question: Is there's something like a cruise control on a
Well,
motorcycle, so you
this is-
don't have to?
this is
constantly-
what
yeah,
I
tell me,
The
what do you
bigger
guys do?
bike, right?
Yeah, there's various on the touring motorcycles, on the ultras. I know there is cruise control, to answer your question, Scott. There is a button, the higher end, but then
So on your
if you're
big like CVO kind of bikes, that's something that comes stock.
well, it doesn't have to be CVO, but even the touring tend to have the a cruise control switch to get it. Now, having said that, when you got a bike that doesn't have any sort of electronics, it's just all physical manpower, then you start looking that there's the throttle lock.
Mhm.
There's a throttle lock. There's devices that you got to look at it carefully, because all it is basically has the hand, that hand position that he decides to have it, and it locks it
Yeah.
with a wing nut or some other attachment over the yes. But now you're assuming that in the next 40, 50 miles or X amount of miles, you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So you're just like, okay, I know that this is the lonely stretch. There's no traffic, and it locks it. So it does give relief. There's another device also that kind of gets on the wrist, on the throttle, but you don't do a gripping motion. You do a pressing motion with the wrist.
It's like
So
a paddle.
it's like a paddle that basically you still have control, but you're not in a gripping.
That's
That's cool.
that was
So
what I
this
figured out how to. That was how I found the compensate is that you can
Yes.
keep your hand on the throttle and keep the throttle
Yeah.
fully engaged
Right.
by just opening up your hand like that. It doesn't feel like
Right.
you have as much control, but
Right.
yeah.
I can tell you, Jay, the paddle I tried for a little bit. I hated it.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
found when I ride and my hand goes numb, I want to move my arm, shake my hands. Sometimes you want to grab the engine if it's really cold. You'll heat up your hands through the gloves. But you just got to get the fingers moving a little bit. I mean,
Yeah,
you can
we
do
might
that
have to
if you don't have it. Some guys tell you to hold the throttle like a doorknob
Yeah.
because it's a different bend in the wrist.
Yeah. That's what it might.
That
That's
also feels a little bit different. But I have a throttle lock, and what Carlos was saying with the throttle lock is,
Do you
like,
use
if
it
you're
though?
going uphill at 50 miles an hour, you're going 50. When you go downhill, you'll be doing like 90 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Because wherever the throttle was, that's where it stays.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right. So, but it's not so hard that you can't like move it while it's still locked.
I might like to have
And
something like that
Just
for
a
an
rubber
emergency
ring that
or for
holds it.
like extra help on a long ride, but my personality is such that like
Because my hand goes numb all the time.
I don't
when
use
I ride.
I don't use like that. So maybe we have to. This might be like another like deep topic, but like, what do I need to do? Like, I'd rather work out my arms and my hands. Like, what do I need to do?
I was gonna suggest that what
Yeah.
I did after my long rides that made my hands cramp up, I just started using those. What are they called? That
Yeah,
you
my son's
squeeze?
got them like the
The
workout things. Yeah.
I do that at work. I just take turns, typing with one hand while I'm working out the other,
Yeah, I would like
Yeah.
to.
and I feel like I've had less cramping since.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna check that out. That was definitely like it was really bad the ride home, and that was because it was I did it was 350 miles. And I only stopped for gas like long enough to stop for gas and get back on the bike and go. And
Wow.
Jay, one more thing on
Yeah.
that throttle. You got like you heard, the paddle is
Yeah.
just kind of crap. There's a throttle like a little bit different there's some other suggestion that it's a quick clamp release.
I saw
it's
something
just
like that, like a spring thing.
Yeah, spring thing that kind of if you give yourself. And
Yeah.
another one you'd have to look on the Sportsters, and I'm not familiar, but I remember the older bikes and the Harley along the throttle.
The wing nut.
Oh,
the
okay,
wing
yeah.
nut, the wing
I
nut,
have that. Yeah,
but
I have that.
again, I preface that from a safety standard.
Yeah.
It's that you're if you know that you're level, nobody
Yeah,
around, and
yeah,
you think you got a few miles to chill out, you can try the wing nut method. But
not for
again,
city use.
I would then go to something that you have a quick release, does give you the control and relaxation.
Yeah.
And I that would be if everything else broken and you're really tired. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
and taking a break is, what I ended up learning is just taking a break. And with my Sportster, I have to stop. I usually stop every 40, 50 miles to get gas anyway. I pushed that on this trip, but there were times you do it. I did learn one of the things I learned just in reading along the trip about other road tripping and touring is good rule of thumb is to prioritize time over mileage. I learned
Yeah.
that mileage doesn't equate to time depending on the kind of riding you're doing and where and the conditions. Riding through 20, 30-mile-an-hour winds with a bike loaded down with gear and all other things is takes a lot out of you. What I found, and it's interesting when I went back and looked at the video, and this is I wouldn't nobody else recommend anybody else do this, but watching my video of me myself riding through the desert and listening to just the audio, what I found is I had to stay at like 70 75 miles an hour. If I got over 75 miles an hour, I felt that wind gusts and too much wind knocking around made the bike not uncontrolled, like feeling uncontrolled, but it felt like if I had to counteract, I would have to counteract too much, and it just felt like it was working too hard. Whereas like 70, 75 miles an hour, it felt like it sat perfectly in a groove. I didn't have to battle the wind as hard. I had my arms, were well and relaxed. And one of the neat things I found was that you can hear, like in the video, because of that, you can hear me slowing down constantly. And we were talking about cruise control. What would happen is I would speed up and I would find myself doing like 80, 85, and all of a sudden I'd start to feel a little bit wobbly from the wind. And then I would slow down, and you can hear it like now when I go back and listen to the audio, I can hear myself. And also in the desert, they're constantly like, this was more like the second and third day riding, there's like these wash areas where like it dips down, like, so every quarter mile there's like a dip basically, and you have to be, because of all this rain that had now passed through earlier in my trip, although the rain was gone, the water was still there. And now the water became an issue in that the areas I was riding along the Colorado River, while it was now sunny out, were getting massive flash flood warnings everywhere. So I had to change my trip to be out of certain elevations in certain spots. And also, like, every time you get to a dip, you've got to make sure that there's no water.
Which
So, oh,
which with what which weather app did you end up finding the most?
oh, awesome
Ha-
question. That's a great. Before I, real quick before I answer that, what I found, like this, like after 2 nights of days of driving in the desert like that, if you've ever been on a cruise, I found, and it wasn't nearly as bad, but the one of the nights I went to sleep, as I was laying there in bed, I could feel myself going through the undulations in the desert, like
Oh wow.
up and down, up and down. Um, so I used a combination of apps. I planned the trip using Road Trippers, which is an app, and they have like a plus feature that we pay for as a family. We're not getting, they don't pay sponsor us or anything. I love it.
But they could.
They could, and
You're welcome to road
it's
trippers.
awesome for, like, it gives you it is the most comprehensive listing of like services and resources along your route, and then you can like plan your stops, and it enabled me to estimate where I wanted to stop between trips. And you can actually go back, and I'll share this with you guys. You can see I actually updated as I went to show where I actually did stop. But I used that to find resources and points of interest off the highway, or off the highways and byways. I used Rever, which is a motorcycle planning app and has Butler motorcycle maps in it, to understand distance and elevation. And Rever has, if you pay for their upcharge service, and by the way, there's some cool ways to get it for free I can tell you about. Well, not really for free, but packaged with other stuff. Anyway, it has awesome 3D elevation. So before you go somewhere, rather than just looking at a straight topo, you can go 3D and to see where you're going to be and what the conditions
Cool.
are. I used Weather Channel and related apps to get weather data, and then I used Google traffic maps to get traffic data. And before I left anywhere, I used all of those things, and it was really important. It was the weather stopped being important after the second day or so, from the extent that when I was in Yuma, my second day, I woke up in the rain. So now it's raining in Yuma, where it
Oh,
wasn't supposed to
shoot.
rain in the desert. So it caught up to me, and I knew that was a slight risk. So I had to wait for the rain to stop raining in Yuma long enough, and which was like around lunchtime, and then drive north to my next stop. But I could only go so far. I couldn't go any further than Lake Havasu, because further north than Lake Havasu, it was still raining and windstorming through Vegas in that area. That was the storm still moving out. So I had to time this window when I could leave Yuma and get to Havasu, in between like the storms. Additionally, I worked myself into a bit of a pickle, and I know we're episodes running long here, but I worked myself into a bit of a pickle in that I was planning ahead, but with my tank size, I now had to make a run from Yuma, Arizona to Lake Havasu, which there's only one way to get there. Without backtracking into California to go along the river, I'd have to take this 95 straight north to Havasu, along the river. The only stop in the middle is this place called Quartzsite, which is another story I'll get to in a second. But basically, it was like a 120 to 150 mile run. So I had to, which is more than I can take. So I had to, and it was 90 miles to get to Quartzsite, which is the first gas station, which is also more than I could take. So long story long, I hit Yuma Harley Davidson. What's up, Yuma Harley Davidson? They were cool. Checked in there, got a T-shirt and some stuff, had a good time. And then I stopped at the very last gas station leaving Yuma, which odometer wise and trip meter wise said you've got 75 miles to get to this Quartzsite town. And I'm like, all right, I had a 30, my 30-ounce fuel reserve with me. So I'm like, whatever happens, let's go. And it turns out my bike gets really good highway mileage, or 2 lanes through the desert with nobody around mileage. And I made it, no problem. But you drive through an area what is known as the Yuma Proving Grounds, which is a military installation where they test stuff. Plus, there are also like civilian, like GM has a facility. There are like all these racetracks and stuff out in the desert where they test all kinds of things. So it was really, really neat. And I'll take a breath in a moment, but this, you could tell, was this was a really cool part of the trip. I made the 75-mile run, sent Carlos a picture of my odometer, as I pulled into the gas station. And what I found out in the desert is crazy. There are, I don't know, I won't say millions, but there are thousands of snowbirds living out in the desert in RVs in the middle of nowhere, basically for free. And that was my experience in Quartzsite. So have any of you guys ever driven through that area or been to Yuma before?
Yeah.
No.
No, you make it sound so great too.
It's really Yuma I didn't get to see too much of because I came in at night and I left kind of in a cloudy day. But there's a thing out in the desert called, and I'll get past this quickly, I promise. But the Bureau of Land Management allows for what they call dispersed camping, which are basically areas where you can just go camp. There are no facilities, but you can stay there for free, and for up to 2 weeks at a time, as long as you move. And moving could be like go 2 feet to your left or right. Every 20 or 30 miles along the side of the road, there are pumping stations like for RVs where they can dump like their blue water tanks or whatever they are. So as you're going through the desert, you just and everything is like the Joshua Tree scrub, like it's kind of eye level. So if you look to your left and right, you can see the mountains on either side of you off in the distance, but you can just kind of make out these white dots every so often through like the scrub, and it's just fifth wheels and RVs all scattered throughout the desert. And Quartzsite is like this tiny little town with a population of 2,000, but they boast 2 million visitors a year, I now know, because all these crazy people are living out in the desert. And there's like, I pull off the highway and there's like a fucking flea market, and they're selling CBD oil and honey and mineral stones and Jesus water and flags
They
and
have dream catchers.
dream catchers and beef jerky. And it's just like you're in it. I mean, it was a 2-day drive from the middle of nowhere just to get to this fucking place, right? And then you're like, you have to be and I later found out the woman who is our tattoo artist here in town, her father lives out. She's like, oh yeah, my father lives in Havasu. He takes his RV down there, and they like. So for another, we're gonna have a spinoff, Old in the Way Investigates, where we do a separate look into that. But I wanted to yammer that at you because it was one of the neatest parts of the experience, and this is why you got to travel, I guess, right? Is there's just if you want to live for free in the desert and you've got an RV or fifth wheel, there's a place for you, So
You should have just called up the show Unsolved Mysteries. I found them. I found all
yeah,
of them.
yeah, I know where they all are.
Jay, let me ask you, Jay. Now, let's go back to the desert, to the storm. You
Yeah.
were there in the storm. I got two questions and again, would be helpful for the readers, the listeners. Bugs, insects,
Yeah.
big bugs smacking you around. Anything about that?
No, fortunately, I didn't deal with any bugs in the desert smacking me around. I definitely picked up, my share of bugs. I did deal with burrows occasionally. There were like wild animals, pigs. I navigated a family of pigs at one point, but no real bug issues. And as aesthetically, I know it's not everybody's favorite look having a giant windshield, which I'm aware of. My bike might have like a more classic and better look if I didn't have a riot shield on the front of it.
But it protects you.
But it protected me. Yeah, it was great. I there were getting once I got into a couple other things. I know and I appreciate you guys. We're up running up on time here, but it was such a great experience in terms of like the things that I learned that are useful and that are not useful. Having your gear, things easily accessible. I lost a few pairs of glasses, that went flying off, off something where I'd had them hung. But really, the having the windshield made a huge difference for like neck, head, and upper body fatigue. I was cold. I was very, very cold on the way home. Leaving Vegas, all the wind and rain was gone, but the temperature regionally was very cold. So driving.
Did you have heated gear?
No heated gear. And you get up to 4,800 feet in two different spots coming home from Vegas to San Diego. First in right outside of Vegas, and then again outside of San Bernardino. And in both places it was low 40s and at that elevation. So I was like wearing literally every piece of clothing I had with me. And it was funny because I stopped I stopped, I think it was in wherever the world's tallest thermometer is, Yermo, California. And there's this little country store, and I get off there, and these two other dudes rolling on Harleys, and we're chatting. And one of the guys, they were headed to Vegas. I was headed to San Diego at this point, and one dude's chatting me up. He's like, "Oh, you going back?" Yeah, it's not too bad going. And like before he could finish the sentence, the guy who was with him, who was like had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth and was like shivering to death, he was like, "It's fucking freezing!" And I was like,
The store is selling sweatshirts for $450.
dude, on the way to Vegas, I was Searchlight. I think
Scott,
it's Searchlight.
Jay sold all his. Scott Jay sold all his clothing.
Yeah,
there was a
$1,000. I'll outfit you.
I think it's Searchlight, Nevada is like the high point coming into Vegas, and I stopped at a gas station there, and I'm pumping gas, and I looked down, and they had like this sandwich board in between the pumps with advertising, and they were selling chaps, vests, and jackets, and like they weren't trying to this was definitely geared towards like if you're freezing your ass off and you have $40, you could buy a pair of chaps in here.
Jay, I got one more question on that regarding to dust and anything. We talked about the windshield protection.
Yeah.
Your helmet has got a visor, yes or no?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Full
so
face.
so you're getting smacked, you got dust, you got crap on your windshield. How did you clean it?
So you know what? I didn't actually, and this was kind of dumb. I left my windshield. I had with me water. I had a spray bottle, and I have wipes, like towelettes, and I brought interesting as a side note, Carlos, as I derail myself. It's amazing. I don't have the list in front of me, but there was a lot of this stuff that like I didn't bring a first aid kit. I did not have a first aid kit with me, so that was one of the stupid things that like should be number one on your list. But I did have things like a water spritz bottle to clean my windshield. I actually I never had a problem seeing through it, and I didn't clean it until I got home, and it was completely stupid and irrational, but it was kind of like I wanted to wear the grit. And but I did have towels with me, which are something that would have been helpful if I needed it.
Okay.
Jay, tell me about the blowing sand too. Did you have any exposed skin that it was getting sandblasted,
I
or was
didn't
it just
no, so I
kind of
didn't.
unpleasant?
It was just unpleasant, and like I felt a little bit of it get into like my helmet is I have like an older style kind of classic look helmet. It looks like a Lego man head, so it's not like super tight around the neck, so there's area where it could get into. I got a little sand there, but honestly, like I didn't have any exposed skin to speak of, which is another thing just from the cold. But like I think your like my brain shifted into survival mode in a way that I wasn't thinking about anything other than like this kind of like keep bike steady, like don't overreact, like and but definitely with the cold, like if I had exposed skin and any of the ride, like I had to stop. I really like I normally don't wear a neck gaiter. I had to put a neck gaiter on because my I was freezing to death, but it was
Yeah.
only temporary.
Your intake, did you notice your performance on your bike with the sand hitting it, anything, or did you look at the bike out there? Did you see the intake? Any part where sand could have collected? Did you have to
I went through
clean or
everything. Yeah, I did. I went through everything the next morning. I didn't find anything that looked like it was, caked up or gunked up. And I even went so far as I was at, it was one of the reasons I made a stop at Yuma Harley Davidson was that if I needed to, any help checking anything out. But I did. I went over the bike. I didn't notice anything. Still haven't noticed any difference. And I got, just for mileage nerds, like I normally my riding around town, my low fuel light usually comes on after like 40 miles and change. I got up to like 60 something on that run to Quartzsite before it finally came on. So you just like after you're out there, like I could see cruise control being viable in some of those situations because there was times when you're just sitting there and you're going 70, 75 miles an hour. There's nothing to stop you. There's no traffic around you. It would have worked then for sure.
you
But
have an odometer?
yeah,
So do you use when you fill up, do you set it to zero?
yeah,
And do you also trust so you're using both the emergency fuel light and the odometer?
right. That's how I time it. And now you get a feel for it. And I'll tell you, like the bike bonding, I have that's what I use. I use the odometer. I use the fuel light. I can get a sense like, I can look in the tank and see how much fuel's in there. And I do have a 30-ounce bottle that I have in my saddlebag now that is just a little bit of a backup. However,
Right.
one of the things not to take us down a completely other path as we run along here, but I have a 4.5 gallon tank I have to put on my bike, and I haven't put it on yet because I haven't found a shop and a place to do it. And honestly, I haven't wanted to spend, it's probably going to cost me $1,000 all in. I'm already in $300 on the tank. It's probably going to cost me another 500 to 1,000 to get it refinished and painted. So I just have to suck it up and do that. And if I really want to, I can flip my Gold Flake tank for probably a significant chunk of what I'm going to have to, after the fact for what it's going to cost me to upgrade. So I just have to go ahead and do that. I feel other than that one part where I was worried, gas was never really, fuel was never really a big concern. The windshield, the plexifairing, I can't credit enough. It was great. I mean, I just felt like I still get plenty of wind, but I'm not getting, rocks and bugs.
Would you do it again?
In a heartbeat. I can't wait to leave. And that is, I know that we're way over time, and I could talk about this endlessly, and we will, I'm sure, in the weeks and months to come. But I had, just such an unbelievable experience, and
Wow.
I work from home, so I'm home a lot, and I'm a homebody to begin with, so I hadn't been out on the road by myself in a while, and it felt good. It really felt good to just not care about, to allow yourself to focus on nothing but what you're doing, which is getting to the next place and getting to a motel and like laying down and taking your gear off. I mean, it felt great. And the Nooms run is the next one I've got
Yeah, come
on
on out to Colorado.
on my plan. And it was funny. I saw this guy. Looked at speaking of people to chat you up. Two more things, and we can wrap it up. One first, I'll say there was a neat as I ran into bikers along the road. People walk up to you and they do this thing, and I don't know if you've experienced this, Eddie, where it's almost like like a Boomhauer statement. Like you can't. It's like unintelligible commentary. But you know what they're basically saying is like, "Wow, you're riding a Sportster, huh?" It's
That
usually
old
like,
bike,
"Oh, hey, it was whoa, she got a Sportster," like, and there was this sort of like as I bumped into these big bagger guys, on their, with all their heated gear and all their shit and, fiberglass, everything. And like where they would like, there was kind of like a respect, like they nodded at you, like, good for you, dude. And, I appreciated that. That was cool. And then there was one guy I saw yesterday who was looking at my bike and he said like, yeah, great bike. It's just, good city bike, but not really a distance bike. And I was like, yeah, no, I did 850 miles back and forth to Vegas last week, but it's not really a distance bike. Like, fuck you, dude. Like,
Are you
like,
saying good for you or better you than me, loser?
yeah, like in that case, like, it's like people, it is what it is, like, so I had a blast. I definitely want to get out and do it again. There's a couple, I shot a recap video that I posted. I also got a really neat, I had a really neat experience where Wyatt and my family, not just Wyatt, my wife and my kids caught up to me on the way home at one point, and I left before them, but I was dilly dallying, making my way home from Vegas, and they had a rental car. I didn't know, so in my defense, I wasn't looking for the traditional family car. But I got off the highway at one point, and the next thing I know, there's Wyatt standing next to me, and you can see in the video, I'm like, holy shit, like,
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
and I went back and I looked at the video from my bike, and you could see like they followed me off the highway, they park, they
Oh
run
my
over. They were standing
gosh.
there for like 10 seconds before I noticed. But and the reason why I mentioned that it was fun, but it was also like just really great to get into your head. And I like being home. I love my house, but I'm anxious to plan another trip again. So the Nooms run is next up. I also, this is probably a little too far north, but I want to go to Mount St. Helens too. I want to see. I drove past it off the highway on the way from Portland to Seattle once, or vice versa. So anyway, thank you guys for letting me ramble on about this. It was such an awesome trip, and I don't know if you heard me say this before, but just it bears repeating. I felt like you guys were there with me. The stuff, I bought the rain gear. I had it ready. I thought of you, Mike, when it started raining, and I was like, you know what, fuck this, 12 miles. I can make it in the rain. I'm not pulling over. I thought of you when my hands, Mike, were black from the inside of the cheap Chinese Amazon gloves that I bought for. So it was Eddie. I thought of you when I looked at my giant windshield, and I'm like, if Eddie can do this without a windshield, I can do it with one. So you're a masochist, but anyway, I really appreciate it, you guys, all the support, and
Thank you for sharing. That's
yeah.
pretty cool. It sounds like you had a great experience, and I really liked your video too. I felt like I was there with you. It's
Yeah.
fun.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And the Taylor Swift concert was fantastic, by the way. She puts on a hell of a show, man. It was really, it's amazing they pack that much talent into one human being. It's crazy how good it was. But, I think that for the next trip, also, we'll have to see if we can't do some more investigating about what is going on in the desert and what's happening out here, so we can bring you guys live from the scene. So,
That's good, Jay.
thank you guys for letting me ramble. I'm gonna this has been an excellent recap, and I've really appreciated catching up. I know we've got Easter holiday for those who celebrate is next week, so I think that means we'll probably be taking a hiatus for that. Carlos, we didn't get to talk about it, but I would love to see when maybe our friends USA on a Harley might want to join us. So maybe we can reach out and see if they want to join us for an
Oh,
upcoming.
cool.
So we can talk.
Yeah, they're already on the road all over the place.
All
So
right, cool.
if you follow up, so I'll reach out to them.
Sweet.
And I'll probably see them on probably maybe this Wednesday if they show up for the hog meeting.
Awesome.
But as far as that, yeah. And there's another lady that I would like to eventually introduce back. She's an old friend, old hog member. She's now living, I think in Minnesota or anything. But I knew her when she didn't know anything, and no pins, no jacket, no bikes, and 5 bikes later, and Iron Butt Queen,
Nice.
going from the East Coast to the West Coast, and in less than, and she's an amazing woman. Had multiple accidents, and her experience that I thought she'd never ever get on a motorcycle, and it showed a determination. I'm going to beat this. And her foot was mangled and everything, but undaunted, healed, got back on the bike, and she's a true inspiration.
Yeah,
so
that sounds amazing. I would love that. Yeah, the more folks that we can get on, the merrier. So I think that'll be. We'll try to get some guests on, and coming up after we take a little holiday break. I've been manging Easter candy and jelly beans to an extent that is probably unhealthy. Last thing before I let you go, one other thing I did learn last week is that 2 Monster energy drinks and 1 6-pack of Reese's peanut butter cups is all that I need for nutrition to get through a day and feel I can ride all day long, man, all day long.
Next episode will be sponsored by the diabetes.
Yeah, exactly. The old and the way diabetes run will be coming up.
Let me make a note of that to carry in my tour pack. Okay, yeah, I got it. Okay.
Yeah. So anything before we let you guys go?
They don't expire.
What's that?
I carry Twinkies. They never expire.
Oh, man. Yeah, you know what? They're probably a little bit more... They don't melt either, do they? In the sun.
They don't do anything. They just sit in the bag forever.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. Oh, I saw a show about Twinkies the other day. About why the origin of Twinkies. But that's for another episode. Carlos, go ahead.
Now, as a personal request, and totally involved, I would like to see if we have a show that you can show somebody like me that while I can ride, I'm always amazed at you, at USA on Harley, and anybody that uses the camera work, the video work, the way it is always, I am in awe of the type of techniques and the equipment, etc., that gives me this perspective that it seems like as if that you have your little personal drone following you and capturing all this, and it's so cool. I mean, I have 2 cameras on my trike, and I'm trying to figure out how to, like today we did a chapter ride. I want to try to see, can I capture some of that video to share with them? But I'm still in a struggling mode there, so I'm going to probably have to take snapshots. So I would like to see on the future, people that ride. I mean,
a tech episode, man. Let's do that. Yeah, we can do.
Sounds good.
Because what you're describing is how I went down the path to what I'm using now, and it's an imperfect science, and one of the things I didn't mention is you lose, there's segments of video that I lost along the way when you're like, fuck, that file corrupted, and it's or I lost a chunk of great visual, like the riding into Vegas. And it's heartbreaking, but I came into Vegas off the highway because I was tired of driving in the fucking wind. And when you get to Vegas, Vegas has got the worst drivers of anybody I've ever experienced in my entire life. It is an insane thing. Anyway, I turned onto Las Vegas Boulevard to drive to our hotel. I went past the sign. I saw the famous sign. As I approached it on my bike, I'm like, what are all these fucking idiots doing in the middle of the road? And I'm like, of course, there's the sign. So we will talk about that on the tech episode. And Carlos, I meant to find we need some music or something, when people go along at the Oscars or something like that, so that you can play that starts to wrap it up.
I'll work on that one, Jay.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, anybody got anything big going on this week they want to plug before we wrap it up?
No, not
Happy,
me.
All right.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Happy
Ride
Easter.
safe. Watch out for patches of sand and all that good stuff in the road. Guys, thank you so much for being the best crew in the world. I could not have done last week without all of the support and encouragement that you guys gave me. I really appreciate it. We'll catch you guys on the flip side. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and namaste. Cheers, everyone.
See y'all soon.
Thank you, guys.
Sunday.
Happy Sunday.